I declare the fifth meeting of the open-ended Committee of Permanent Representatives open. I wish to extend a warm welcome to all delegates from all around the world connecting to this meeting virtually. As this is the first time we organize an OACPR online, I look forward to counting with your support for an effective and fruitful meeting. As you can see, I find myself today in the UN headquarters in Nairobi, accompanied by the Secretariat. And I recognize here Madam Joyce Msuya, to my right, Mr. Jorge Laguna, Mr. Ulf Bjornsson, from the Office of Government Affairs. After almost a year chairing the Committee of Permanent Representatives virtually, I should say that being here today strengthens my hope that soon enough our joint efforts to overcome the current pandemic will provide us the opportunity to meet face to face as effective multilateral diplomacy requires. Unfortunately, we are not there yet, and we have seen today the difficulties of putting such an important meeting in operation. COVID-19 continues to claim human lives, and the disruptions triggered by the pandemic are pushing millions back to poverty in all parts of the world. The pandemic and its consequences forced us to adapt and to cope with new challenges. But it has also led us, environmental multilateralists, to reconnect to important principles we forged jointly in the last 50 years, and that remain our guiding stars. Indeed, circumstances have made these all the more evident and relevant. Among them, Principle 1 of the 1992 Rio Declaration, stating that human beings are at the center of the concerns for sustainable development. I trust that my presence here at UNEP headquarters can symbolize our commitment to the continued strengthening of Nairobi's headquarters functions as called for in paragraph 88 and within the institutional and conceptual framework of the future we want, as well as fulfill the requirements contained in Rule 4 of the Rules of Procedure of UNEA, which apply mutatis mutandi to this OACPR. Distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, as you know, the fifth OACPR has before it a limited number of decisions to be considered this year, all addressing urgent administrative and budgetary matters. This is because we are acutely aware of the inherent limitations of diplomacy in online settings, in particular in terms of transparency and inclusivity, cornerstones of multilateralism. We have therefore jointly agreed to avoid online negotiations on substantive matters and to defer such debates to a time when we can meet face to face again, which I hope will be soon. My aim is to finalize consideration of agenda items 1 to 7 during this first session, and then address item 8, that is, the draft decisions on administrative and budgetary matters at our meetings scheduled for this afternoon and tomorrow morning. During this opening session, we will adopt the minutes from the 153rd meeting of the committee, hear a comprehensive presentation of the reports of the Executive Director to UNEA 5, including the proposed medium-term strategy and program of work and budget. We will consider the process to agree to a contribution to the high-level political forum, and we will hear an update from the co-facilitators on the consultations on the General Assembly Resolution 73/333, which take place under the auspices of the Committee of Permanent Representatives. Tomorrow afternoon, we will also receive an update from the President on his initiative to seek agreement on a consensual message from UNEA 5. after which we will consider for adoption a draft chair's summary of this meeting. The aim is to adjourn our meeting tomorrow afternoon and then resume this fifth OACPR in 2022 at a date to be decided in the context of the deliberations on one of the draft decisions that is before us. The current version of the draft decisions are the result of two preliminary rounds of discussions held in the committee, and they reflect all written comments received by February 1st. The drafts, as well as inputs in writing from member states, have been made available by the Secretariat through the PaperSpot platform. I trust that all of you have had an opportunity to examine these documents and access through an account for this portal. If not, kindly contact the Secretariat as they will assist you in setting up your account. All other relevant background documents for this meeting, including its provisional agenda and structure, can be accessed in the meeting portal. Due to the many tasks ahead and to ensure that we conclude our work successfully within the limited time available, it will be imperative to use our time efficiently. I count on your full support and cooperation to ensure that we complete this challenging task and accomplish our ambitious goals by tomorrow evening. Let me stop here and turn the floor over to the Executive Director, Madame Inger Anderson, to provide her introductory remarks. Madame Anderson, you have the floor. One second, we are connecting with Madame Anderson.
Okay. With some luck, can I get a thumbs up if you can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Inger.
Thank you. It's very frustrating,
Welcome.
I have to say. Let me try again because I started halfway through my speech. First of all, let me say to all that there's nothing we would rather be than be in our beautiful campus in Nairobi, together with all in person. As did the chair, I can only express my deep hope that we will soon be there and meeting with you all physically and in person. That is indeed what that headquarters, our beautiful headquarters, is meant for, and that is what it shall be, God willing. But Chair, I speak before you nevertheless at a time when environmental governance still stands tall. And I'm honored to address you and delegates, excellencies, as we embark on what will be marked in the history of environment as unique, 2 intense and complex days with great patience, I know, as we soldier through the 5th meeting of the open-ended Committee of Permanent Representatives. I acknowledge that virtual meetings are not easy, and we saw that this morning. And a few days ago, the UN Secretary General nevertheless acknowledged also that we cannot allow for the pandemic to keep us from working together as we together work on the crucial pathway he was referencing to Glasgow. So I am very, very proud of ourselves and of you, delegates, as we now stand on the first ever virtual UNEA 5, UNEA, and you are, by convening this meeting, sending a very strong message to the world that environmental governance, albeit in a more limited form, because we will not take the bigger decisions now, can and will continue. Because people on the planet can no longer afford to wait anymore, and because decisions and actions cannot be deferred. And in this regard, allow me to give my warm appreciation and truly commend you, Chair, and all members of the CPR for your very, very able leadership and the leadership that has allowed the CPR to reach this milestone. In the same vein, I wish to recognize the leadership of the President of the Assembly, who has led efforts to develop the message from the online UNEA. This is a commendable effort to elevate the visibility of the Assembly, and my recognition therefore also to him and to members of the Bureau of the Assembly. Because it is possible to change our relationship with the planet so that it can serve the people. As the science is crystal clear that after years of postponing action, it is now inevitable we have to tackle these three planetary crises: the climate crisis, the biodiversity and nature crisis, and the pollution and waste crisis. And in so doing, we can in fact make major shifts. To fail to address these three crises would be to change our relationship with the natural world, to pull the rug from under people's feet, people who are beginning to emerge from poverty, and that is simply not an option. So, Excellencies, I very much hope that we can together look at what lies before us in this OECPR. The first, of course, is the first decision that we will take is the MTS that I've just spoken about. The second decision that we will look at is the resumption of UNEA 5 in 2022 and on the commemoration for UNEBAT 50, a celebration to which we all look forward. UNEA 5.2, if I may call it that for short, will look at further strengthening our actions for nature, for the Sustainable Development Goals, and indeed to secure our future for this planet, on this planet, to bridge the implementation gaps in international environmental law and environmental governance in the context of Rio+20 outcome document. At UNEA 5.2, we'll also seek to extend our ambitious work and forward-looking agreements on marine litter, on microplastics, and follow up on relevant mandates from previous sessions, including the future of the global environmental outlook. And third, in this OECPR, we seek your concurrence on a decision of the management of trust funds and earmark contributions, so that we may ensure that the resources are where they need to be to ensure the most efficient utilization of our resources, both at the UNEP Secretariat itself, as well as at the UNEP Secretariat, UNEP-hosted Secretariats of the multilateral agreements that are housed within our big tent. You will also review an extensive array of working documents prepared by the Secretariat that will lay the foundation for the resumed UNEA in 2022. So, Excellencies, let me stress that as you open today's proceedings, UNEP is in a strong position to live up to its ambitious global mandate and to deliver to member states. Despite the financial challenges at the global setting of 2020, I am very pleased and proud to report that income to the core fund, the Environment Fund, has increased with contributions from 77 member states, out of which 40% have paid what we refer to as their fair share, in line with the voluntary indicative scale of contributions. I thank you deeply for your vote of confidence in us, and I count on all countries to contribute in 2021. Excellencies, this will be a UNEA like no other. Sitting at the pinnacle of the environmental governance, your determination to get on with the job at hand, despite the difficulties of online meeting, sets the bar and sets it high. At a time when countries are borrowing at unprecedented monies from future generations to kickstart economies and overcoming this devastating pandemic, I submit to you that there has never been a more important role for UNEP and for UNEA at the stage. So I look forward to, Excellencies, of your listening to the deliberation. Remain assured that we at the Secretariat, we stand at the ready to implement your decisions. I thank you.
Thank you, Inge, for your statement. I will now open the floor for any introductory statements by regional and political groups, as well as any member state delegation that may wish to take the floor at this stage. To ensure effective time management, I encourage you to strictly limit your statements to a maximum of 5 minutes for regional and political groups and 3 minutes for individual delegations. Thank you. I now invite you to ask for the floor. I have on my list the European Union and member states, followed by the African group of states. I call on the distinguished delegation of the European Union.
Chair, Madam Executive Director and Deputy Executive Director, distinguished delegates joining us today online from all around the world. It's my privilege to speak on behalf of the European Union's 27 member states, and Montenegro, Serbia and Ukraine have also aligned themselves with this statement. As I think Inga said very clearly, what brings us here today is the urgency. The foundations of our life are under threat. The planet keeps warming, and the changing weather patterns devastate our livelihoods. The way we handle species and ecosystems is spurring pandemic risks. Biodiversity loss and deforestation are occurring at an alarming rate. Air and water pollution, toxic chemicals kill millions of people each year, and we fill our oceans with plastic. And while we are to address this environmental emergency, we are in addition hit by a pandemic that has taken extra millions of lives already. But we can't be fooled. There is unfortunately no room for wait and see. We have to act smarter. We have to tackle the major drivers of these crises simultaneously and with no delay. We need to transition and recover our economy and society not to where they were before, but to a better, greener and more sustainable one. The science is clear, backed up in particular by the excellent work of UNEP. The evidence is there. The current model of development degrades the Earth's finite capacity to sustain human well-being. It threatens the achievement of our sustainable development goals, as we read very clearly in UNEP's report, Making Peace with Nature, which synthesized the key scientific assessments of past years and which we will launch next week during UNEA 5. And as we enter this last stage of preparations for the UNEA 5 meeting, we're looking forward to an impactful and yet also ambitious outcome in spite of the virtual format and the challenges we sometimes face in this way of working. The EU and its member states welcome UNEP's medium-term strategy 2022 to 2025 and the programme of work budget for 2022-2023. This is a fantastic piece of work by the Secretariat, by the UNEP, and it gives clear directions to tackle the environmental crisis and a transition to sustainable consumption and production patterns. We're pleased with the inclusive, nearly 2 years long process and engagement of the member states and stakeholders in the preparation of this document. We also welcome the very realistic translation of policy priorities into funding priorities and the tight and coherent link between the two. The EU and its member states stand ready to adopt the strategy and support unreservedly its implementation. At the same time, and Chair, this came out as well from your earlier intervention as well as that of Inga's, we do need a strong commitment by all member states, stakeholder organisations and individuals to enact the change. The UNEA 5 Part 1, taking place at the beginning of this year 2021, presents an enormous opportunity to mobilise efforts and encourage ambition for the bunch of the extremely important events taking place later this year, where the international community will make decisions from climate to biodiversity, chemicals and waste, desertification and land protection and food systems. As our ministers will meet next week online, we need them to pass a clear message in this regard, as well as kickstart a vigorous process for preparing the in-person UNEA 5 in 2022, starting from day one after the online session. We should build on the wealth of evidence and reported progress on the implementation of UNEA resolutions presented in the Executive Director's reports. That should bring about concrete decisions on action for nature, a green transition, sustainable consumption and production, and a global agreement on plastics. We thank and support the President of UNEA for his proposal for the message from the online UNEA 5. This would not only give voice to UNEA, but also to Nairobi as the environment capital of the world and the only hub of the United Nations in the Southern Hemisphere. We would also like to take this opportunity to thank UNEP and our host Kenya for the generous offer to launch the 50th commemoration of UNEP at 50 during the UNEA 5 virtual session, and to conclude formally back-to-back with the next iteration of UNEA 5 in 2022. Ladies and gentlemen, the EU is committed to make UNEA 5 a success. We are also committed to a close cooperation with all partners to make a global change and a true transition to better, greener, and more sustainable economy and society. Through our new growth strategy, the European Green Deal, we will be following that change and we will be enacting that change internally and with our partners together around the world. We are pleased to collaborate with a number of member states, including our host Kenya, as well as with UNEP and UNIDO, to launch during this UNEA meeting a global alliance on circular economy and resource efficiency. We invite all parties to join us in this endeavour. Chair, allow me to finish by thanking you for all your hard work in the run-up to today's OECPR meeting, and by wishing all of us a fruitful OECPR meeting this week and an impactful UNEA. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Mordew, for your kind words and for your statement. And now I give the floor to Ambassador Bayen Rusum, Dean of the Diplomatic Corps in Nairobi and Chair of the African Group. You have the floor, Mr. Ambassador.
Thank you, Chair. Dear Executive Director of UNEP, Madam Inger Anderson, and your Deputy, Madam Joyce, dear Chair of the Committee of Permanent Representatives, Ambassador Coimbra, Jorge and Secretariat, distinguished delegates from all over the world, ladies and gentlemen. I feel very much privileged, and it is my honor to deliver this statement on behalf of the African Group. Dear Chair, we have this morning 2 meetings, ADC Bureau meeting and the ADC meeting that included officials from all our capitals of Africa and our embassies in Addis Ababa, along with UNEP Africa. And we agreed on this statement that I'm going to read now. Mr. Chairperson, let me take this opportunity to commend the Bureau of the Committee of Permanent Representatives under your leadership for the tremendous work undertaken during the intersessional period for the preparations of the online meeting of the 5th Open-Ended Committee of Permanent Representatives and the 5th session of the UN Environment Assembly. This work has been undertaken over the last year under very unusual and difficult circumstances due to the COVID-19 pandemic. We are facing a global crisis unlike any other in our history, which has affected our environment and the economies, and has caused human suffering and disrupted our history, which has affected our environment and the economies, and has caused human suffering and disrupted our normal day-to-day activities. Consequently, we have been forced to convene this important meeting virtually. While some groundwork has been covered in preparation for UNEA 5, we recognize that we can only do so much under the prevailing circumstances, and there remains a lot to be done in the run-up of the resumed UNIA 5 in 2022. Your leadership and engagement has been instrumental in enabling the CPR to navigate through these challenging times. I wish to express the commitment of the African Group in supporting you and your team and ensuring successful deliberations during the online meetings of OCPR 5 and UNIA 5. Mr. Chairperson, the African Ministers of Environment held the 8th special session of AMSEN virtually on 4th December 2020 under the theme Enhancing Environmental Action for Effective Post-COVID-19 Recovery in Africa. The ministers reaffirmed their commitment to continue efforts to conserve, protect, and enhance the resilience of Africa's environment and natural resources as part of their determined efforts in the fight against the COVID-19 pandemic. They agreed to implement an African Green Stimulus Program, which aims to contribute to both the post-COVID-19 recovery plan for Africa and other responses and recovery programs in a more environmentally sustainable, resilient, and low-emission developmental pathway. For it to be successful, the Green Stimulus Program will require commitment, support, and political will from member states, individuals, institutions, the private sector, and civil society, as well as finance, technology, and capacity from bilateral and multilateral partners. The African Ministers of Environment, through AMSEN, will continue to provide political leadership towards the implementation of the programs as an integral part of Africa's socio-economic recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic and enhance resilience in the face of future crises, while remaining cognizant of challenges and commitments made before this pandemic. Mr. Chairperson, the African Group wishes to take this opportunity to register its support for the revised and streamlined agenda and structure of this fifth open-ended CPR, which will consider, among other things, or among other issues, the revised 3 draft decisions focusing on urgent budgetary, administrative, and procedural issues as already agreed upon by consensus. While recognizing this, the African Group wishes to recall its long-standing position of no virtual negotiations. This is also said recalling the impeccable balance we have had to reach in ensuring that the work of UNEP, of this UN headquarters, and its support to member states in achieving sustainable development is unremitting, and the agenda for environment is continued. With that said, the African Group welcomes the draft UNEP midterm strategy for the period 2022-2025, program of work and budget for the period 2022-2023, and their related appropriations for the Environment Fund, and looks forward to further discussions of the same during this open-ended CPR during this open-ended CPR. In this regard, the group wishes to make a strong call against the use of terminologies that are undefined and not internationally agreed in the MTS to avoid legitimizing terms that have not been agreed upon through the appropriate, competent, intergovernmental multilateral forum. The group wishes to emphasize the need for a more coordinated and coherent regional delivery of the program of work with the view of improving the effectiveness of UNEP's support to countries in the region. This is also in the context of previous requests by the group on strengthening of UNEP's regional presence in Africa, in accordance with paragraph 88 of the Future We Want. We believe such strengthening will continue to promote an efficient and effective delivery of UNEP's mandate in the region. Mr. Chairperson, regarding the draft decision of the adjournment and the resumption of UNIA 5, the group wishes to maintain the procedural nature of this draft throughout the online discussions and discourages addressing matters of substantive through this decision. Furthermore, the group would like to highlight the need to use direct language from UNGA 73/333 when referring to the process, particularly as it refers to the role of UNIA on the matter. The resolution should mindfully remain a procedural one in honor of this intergovernmental process. In addition, the group calls for thematic areas to be highlighted when referring to existing mandates from previous UNIA sessions, as opposed to listing adopted resolutions, as the listing may be far-reaching, considering that the decision should remain short and concise. This will also ensure that our discussions remain focused on achieving sustainable development and eradicating poverty. Mr. Chairperson, the African Group acknowledges the importance of commemorating the 50th anniversary of the establishment of UNEP, which is headquartered in Nairobi, the Global South and Africa. The group echoes its earlier statements indicating its readiness to work collaboratively with the President of UNIA 5 and the incoming President of UNIA 6 in the preparations towards a successful commemoration. The group would like to see a substantive and successful commemoration of the 50th anniversary of UNEP, which will help reinforce the centrality of UNEP in the global environmental agenda and at the Global Environmental Authority. The group believes that it is imperative for the UNEP Committee of Permanent Representatives to play a significant role in this process. The group welcomes the proposal to use the intersessional period to give prominence to the commemoration, including through the high-level political forum, conference of parties of multilateral environment agreements, and other relevant meetings. While doing so, we recognize the need for clear, concise, and substantive messages to be shared on the commemoration throughout these relevant meetings. Mr. Chair, the African Group reaffirms its position of accommodating messages to be released during the online UNIA 5 session, mainly serving a purpose of highlighting that the Assembly recognizes the importance of maintaining high-level discussions on the environment, despite all the challenges brought about by the COVID-19 pandemic and based on the theme of UNIA 5. We therefore remain ready to engage constructively in the deliberations of this online open-ended CPR. Finally, Mr. Chairperson, I wish to once again express our unequivocal support towards cooperating with member states, regional groups, and your team in ensuring a successful open-ended CPR 5.1. I thank you for your attention. Thank you.
I thank the distinguished ambassador and permanent representative of Eritrea speaking on behalf of the African Group for his statement and for his kind offer to work with the chair and the team for a successful OECPR. We will indeed work closely with yourself and other groups and delegations. Distinguished ambassadors, delegates, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to kindly invite you to send to the Secretariat your written submissions and statements so that they can be shared, as we have been facing some, we are still facing some technical difficulties. In that regard, I also was informed that some delegations are having some difficulties in requesting for the floor. So I would kindly ask the supporting technical team to look into that so that we can continue the meeting smoothly. The next speaker on my list is the distinguished delegation of South Africa, to whom I give the floor.
Thank you, Ambassador Coimbra. Just to make sure whether I can be heard.
Yes, we hear you.
Perfect. Thank you, Ambassador, Executive Director Anderson. Thank you for this opportunity to deliver this statement on behalf of the South African delegation. Mr. Chair, My delegation wishes to thank you for your work in leading the preparations for this OECPR, and also to thank the Executive Director and the Secretariat for their support regarding the logistical arrangements and the availability of the relevant documentation to enable our discussions here today. At the outset, my delegation aligns itself with the intervention delivered on behalf of the Africa Group. My delegation recognizes the important role of the OECPR in the preparations for UNEA, particularly this unique one that we're facing this year, as the subsidiary, intersessional, and open-ended body of the United Nations Environment Programme, and further reaffirms its mandate and functions as set out in the Governing Council decisions. We also further appreciate that this body provides an opportunity for interaction with representatives from other stations as well as officials from their respective capitals, with the common aim of preparing for a successful assembly. Chairperson, my delegation acknowledges the challenges posed by the COVID-19 pandemic in our meetings and continues to support the consensus decision of considering only administrative, budgetary, and procedural matters during this online session of UNEA 5, while looking forward to engagements on substantive resolutions and a ministerial declaration at the reconvened session in 2022. In this regard, my delegation wishes to recall the spirit in which we agreed to meet for the online UNEA 5 session and the 5th OECPR of no virtual negotiations on substantive issues. We look forward to continued deliberations via virtual means for purposes of information exchange, while remaining supportive of the efforts towards strengthening UNEP and to enable it to assist member states in achieving the Sustainable Development Goals and eradicating poverty. Mr. Chair, my delegation wishes to reiterate its support for commemorating the 50 years of UNEP's establishment and for the commemorative event to be held as per Decision 2 of UNEA 4 in its headquarters in Nairobi, in the Global South and in Africa. We remain committed to discussions that would be followed by the UNEP at 50 kickoff in the coming week, as well as the overall substantive message that will be articulated in all the relevant meetings on the environment. The discussions in this regard should remain consultative, inclusive, and member states driven, with equal participation of all member states. Lastly, Mr. Chair, we look forward to fruitful deliberations this week and in the coming week, and extend our commitment to future discussions during the intersessional period leading to the substantive session of UNEA in 2022. I thank you.
I thank the distinguished delegation of South Africa and now recognize the distinguished delegation of Turkey.
Hello, Honorable Chair. Am I audible?
Yes, we hear you, Turkey.
Much Excellencies, dear colleagues, allow me to first apologize on behalf of my ambassador due to unforeseen and urgent circumstances. He couldn't be with us here today, and I will be delivering an opening statement as the Turkish TPR on my ambassador's behalf. Ladies and gentlemen, as you are aware, environmental protection, mitigation of biodiversity loss, restoration of ecosystems, and prevention of loss of species and habitats are directly related to human health and prosperity. In this regard, all future environmental policies are focusing on the joint welfare of humans and nature. As a sustainable platform, UNEA aims at enriching our approach of environmental protection in line with this perspective. We welcome the UNEP medium-term strategy and particularly its chapter on nature action for providing a detailed midterm planning on environmental protection. We believe that with the adoption of MTS, UNEP will promote a new global biodiversity framework and tackle the issues which were not covered by Aichi targets more inclusively. Furthermore, MTS has the potential to constitute a step towards a global environmental accord in the long run. We believe that preservation of biodiversity should be engaged and streamlined in parallel with sustainable development, and our priority should be to keep a solid balance between economic development and environmental protection. In line with these ideals, we plan to increase the rate of protected areas in Turkey from 10% to 15% by 2023 and thus contribute to the 2025 targets of MTS. Furthermore, Turkey has other national environmental targets we intend to achieve in the coming years, which are complementary in nature to the prospective outcomes MTS would like to achieve by 2025. The targets specified in our 11th National Development Plan is an illustration of our commitment to the global environmental agenda. In this context, we would like to emphasize that all member states should take joint but differentiated responsibility in the combat against the climate change in accordance with their relative capabilities. Turkey has also developed its own climate change action plan and intends to contribute to the UNEP's targets by playing a pioneering and inclusive role at national and international level. Lastly, we welcome the decision to assign a fund worth of $24 million for the nature action for the period 2022 and 2023. We believe that this amount will become a substantial source to realize the MTS targets and outcomes. We wish for a fruitful and engaging UNEFI for all member states in advance. Thank you.
I thank the distinguished delegation of Turkey for her statement, and the next speaker on my list is the Russian Federation.
Thank you, Chair. Distinguished Chair.
Директор, мы хотели бы прежде всего
Outset.
которые прозвучали уже в этом
Of gratitude that have been spoken in this room for the successful and intensive preparation for our meeting today.
выражению уверенности в том, что эта сессия будет успешной. Господин председатель, по повестке дня мы хотели бы...
Mr. Ambassador, I'm sorry to interrupt. I would like to request your patience and ask that you begin again your statement. As it's being cut, we are hearing only partially the interpretation. So please, Mr. Ambassador, if you could bear with the technical difficulties and start again your statement. Thank you.
Distinguished Chair, distinguished Madam Executive Director, we express our gratitude to you for preparing this session. And we also join those who expressed certainty that it will be a very successful one, thanks to our joint effort.
Мы отмечаем работу ЮНЕП по
UNEP's work in implementing UNEA Resolution 4/6 on marine plastic litter. We believe that this topic, which has become more relevant as noted by the Russian President, Mr. Putin, at the Davos Economic Forum this year, should become a promising area of work for UNEP. In this regard, we welcome the results of the expert group and their work, the work of the expert group on marine litter, and we take note of their recommendations to launch
по выработке нового международного
a process to develop an international agreement in this area under UNEP auspices. At the same time, Chair, we would express our concern regarding the draft midterm strategy which has been presented to us for adoption. We believe that at this stage, there is no consensus yet reached on this document. We are forced to note that once again it does not contain our comments. Firstly, the goal of ensuring equitable geographical distribution in the professional staff and in UNEP's academic work has not been set out properly. We believe this is a crucially important issue. We regularly discuss the issue of geographic imbalance and the need to adopt urgent measures to rectify it. In this regard, we suggest it is necessary to add to the draft document specific goals on achieving a geographic balance in the staff of the Secretariat, indicating time frames similarly to the efforts undertaken for gender equality. Secondly, Chair,
мы обратили внимание и
note, and we support the thought expressed in the statement by the African Group on the inadmissibility of using within the strategy concepts that have not been agreed upon at the intergovernmental level. We believe that the goals set out in the UNEP strategy to promote environmental rights, as they are called, are not in keeping
термин экологические права так и не был
level. The term environmental rights has not been defined in any governing body decision.
системы ООН и ЮНЕП в частности.
UN system and in UNEP in particular, there is no intergovernmentally harmonized decision which would grant UNEP a direct mandate to conduct work on an area such as advancing environmental rights, etc. We believe that such wording should be deleted from the text so this document can be adopted by consensus with universal support. We could, if necessary, consider a proposal on bringing the wording into line with UN documents, that is to say, in line with the UN documents which do have a recognition of the interlinkage between human rights and the environment, as set out in Human Rights Council resolutions and in UNEA Resolution 2/15. We must continue our intensive work on harmonizing these documents to achieve a consensus for the start of UNEA 5. For our part, we stand ready to conduct such work. I thank you.
I thank the distinguished delegation of the Russian Federation for the statement, and I have been informed that we are still facing some technical difficulties. There are delegations that are not able to hear the interventions through the interpretation. So I would kindly request the technical supporting team to look into that so that we can proceed with the meeting without any interruptions. The next speaker on my list is the distinguished delegation of Egypt, to whom I give the floor.
Excellencies, Madam Executive Director, dear colleagues. At the outset, I would like to thank the Executive Director for her opening remarks and the Secretariat for their efforts to prepare for this meeting. I also wish to join previous speakers in commending the exceptional work undertaken by the Chair and by the Bureau of the CPR in navigating us through these unprecedented times. Despite the challenges, we are pleased with the progress made, and our meeting today is a testament to this. We would, of course, like to also extend our appreciation to the UNEA Presidency and Bureau for their excellent work thus far. Before delving into specific substance, Before us at the OSCPR, Egypt aligns itself with the statement delivered by the African Group, and in particular wishes to recall the cardinal principle of no virtual negotiations. As far as the draft decision on the MTS program of work and budget are concerned, Egypt welcomes the draft MTS for the period 2022-2025, the program of work and budget. In this regard, Egypt seeks further clarification on the use of terminologies that are undefined and not internationally agreed in the MTS. Could the use of such terms be seen as legitimizing them, particularly since they have not been agreed upon through the appropriate, competent intergovernmental multilateral fora? Egypt also wishes to thank the Secretariat for their commendable efforts to better align the references made in the MTS POW to the various multilateral environmental agreements, including the UNFCCC and the UNCBD. We also welcome the proposed additions to the draft decision from some delegations to further stress on the importance of respecting the mandates and legal autonomy of the MEAs, and not preempting their work, including the process currently underway to develop the post-2020 biodiversity framework, as well as the need to balance between the three pillars of the UNFCCC: adaptation, mitigation, and means of implementation. We believe that UNEP is well placed to identify areas of synergy and complementary across the multilateral environmental landscape without redefining their work or overstepping their mandates. As far as the draft decision on the adjournment and resumption of UNEA 5 is concerned, we wish to reaffirm the need to maintain the procedural nature of this draft and avoid delving into substantive considerations. It is also essential to remain aligned with the language of United Nations General Assembly Resolution 73/333 when references are made to this decision, particularly as it pertains to UNEA's role and mandate. In addition, this delegation wishes to avoid listing adopted resolutions in this decision in order to avoid giving the impression that we are cherry-picking certain decisions or giving them precedence over others. Perhaps highlighting thematic areas may be a more constructive approach in this regard. Egypt acknowledges the importance of commemorating the 50th anniversary of the establishment of the UNEP, which is headquartered in Nairobi, the Global South and Africa, and looks forward to Africa's leadership of this member state-driven process in collaboration with the current UNEA presidency and all member states. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I thank the distinguished delegation of Egypt for the statement and the kind words addressed to the chair and the other members of the Bureau. El próximo orador es Argentina. Tiene la palabra, Argentina.
Argentina, you have the floor, please. Thank you very much, Chair. Chair, I would like to take this opportunity to pay a warm welcome to you and to all the delegates and members of the Secretariat, Madam Inga Anderson. I'd like to wish all of you a very successful and excellent day ahead. As we have mentioned on previous occasions, we would like to convey our preference for face-to-face meetings, in particular with permanent representatives of UNEP and UNEA. These virtual meetings, Chairman, are very useful to be aware of different positions, but for various reasons, they are not really desirable if we try to negotiate to adopt decisions. Given the sanitary measures required in this pandemic world, it would be of interest to consider the possibility to hold meetings of UNEP under hybrid format, which combines face-to-face meetings in Nairobi with virtual meetings. And the February 22 meeting, which we hope will be a face-to-face meeting, Chairman. As others have said, we understand that today we will address procedural matters and not substantive matters. Thank you very much, Chairman, for your time.
Argentina por su intervención y reconozco ahora a la distinguida delegación de Belarus.
I give the floor to Belarus, says the chair. Good afternoon. Distinguished Executive Director.
Комитета постоянных представителей. Добрый день, уважаемые господа послы, коллеги. От белорусской стороны
Belarus's part, we wish to thank you for your productive work.
А также хотим разделить озабоченность Российской Федерации
The concerns of the Russian Federation and the African Group regarding the proposed midterm strategy. We hold that this draft needs to be further worked on and has not reached a final.
Считаем, что положение и задачи, затрагивающие термин «экологические права человека», не могут быть приняты.
Environmental rights cannot be used in the strategy due to the lack of generally recognized, internationally harmonized concepts in this document.
Такое положение дел не позволяет
State of affairs does not allow us to affirm that UNEP has
прав в качестве устоявшегося концепта. Также исходим из того, что данные термины следует либо убрать из текста стратегии, либо доработать и привести их в рамки общепризнанных ООН категорий. Спасибо большое за внимание. Надеемся, что сессия завершится успешно.
I thank the distinguished delegation of Belarus for the statement. And the last speaker on my list on this part of the meeting is the delegation of Zambia, to whom I give the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, colleagues. Chair, let me from the outset join others in expressing our profound gratitude to you and your team for the excellent work that you have put in organizing this important meeting at this trying moment. I wish also to align my statement to the one which was presented on behalf of the African Group. Chair, Zambia wishes to agree with the approach that has been adopted for this important meeting or session, where we only seek to progress work on budgetary and administrative issues. We believe that this is the best approach, as it will enable us to actually ensure that UNEP has a mandate emanating from this particular session to progress in terms of implementation of its core activities as we wait to actually look at substantive issues that will be agreed upon in the resumed session of UNEA 5. Chair, we consider this particular meeting as an important meeting as it will help us to advance on core issues that will actually make us transition very effectively to the next level of in-person meeting that will help us to actually look at those substantive issues. My government welcomes the draft decisions, which are mainly focusing on the UNEP midterm strategy for the year 2022 to 2025 and the program of work and budget for the biennial years 2022 and 2023. And the other one on the management of trust fund, and also on the adjustment and resumption of the UNEA 5. However, Chair, we want to put it on record that in undertaking the decisions on these issues, we call upon your office to actually exercise flexibility and ensure participation of all the member states. As we know that all the multilateral issues are very important and that equal participation should be ensured, and also transparency in the manner on the way the decisions are being adopted is very key. Otherwise, we remain committed as a country to ensure that we work together with your team and the other member states to forge ahead and strengthen our position as UNEP and also UNEA to take action that will actually help us to address various challenges that we are facing in the world today. Thank you, Chair.
I thank the distinguished delegation of Zambia for the statement. That has concluded my list of speakers. However, the Secretariat has informed me that there are other delegations that wish to speak at, and have general statements. So I will return to the general statements later when we have overcome the technical difficulties we are facing. So I apologize for that. Your position will, your opportunity to address the OACPR will be granted, and we will return to this moment of the meeting later in the afternoon. So colleagues, now moving to agenda item 2, adoption of minutes of the 153rd meeting of the Committee of Permanent Representatives. The next agenda item is adoption of minutes of the 153rd meeting of the CPR. I invite you to turn your attention to the minutes of the 153rd meeting of the CPR held on 26 January as contained in document UNEP/OACPR .2/2, apologies, which is available on the meeting portal. Is there any delegation wishing to take the floor under this issue, adoption of the minutes? I see no delegations. It is, we have adopted the minutes. Thank you. Now, moving on, I think we must, before we move on, I think we must adopt the agenda, actually, and apologies for that. May I submit to your consideration the adoption of the agenda, which is contained in document UNEP/OACPR .5/1. I see no objections. It is so decided. Thank you very much. We have an agenda, and actually we even adopted its item number 2. Apologies for the confusion. Moving on to agenda item 3, organization of work of the 4th meeting of the open-ended Committee of Permanent Representatives. Let us move to the next agenda item, organization of work. I wish to remind all delegations that the proposed organization of work as annexed in the agenda of the OACPR has already been considered and endorsed by the Committee of Permanent Representatives in its 153rd meeting upon recommendation by the Bureau. In my opening remarks, I outlined the plans of how to conduct this meeting, which is fully aligned with the proposed organization of work as reflected in the annex to the adopted agenda. I must nevertheless comment that we are now facing some technical difficulties, which we are trying to surmount as we move on. If we are not able to do so in the next few minutes, I will propose that we interrupt consideration of our agenda item after consideration of agenda item 3, so that we can move directly to the consultations on the 3 draft decisions, so that we can revert back to agenda item 4 and subsequent items in order to benefit from interpretation, which is an essential ingredient of the consideration of such items. So let us see if we can sort out the technical difficulties we are facing in the next few minutes. Otherwise, I hope, if there is no objection, that we can proceed as I have outlined. If there are no delegation requesting for the floor in regards to the proposal I have just made, I thank you for your understanding and now move on to continuing to discuss agenda item 3. The organization of work is therefore adopted with the changes that I have just orally outlined. Thank you. Due to the many tasks ahead and to ensure that we conclude our work successfully within the limited time available, it will be imperative to use our time efficiently. I count on your full support and cooperation to ensure that we complete this challenging task and under these severe technical difficulties and accomplish our ambitious goal by tomorrow evening. Let me stop here and turn the floor over to the Executive Director, Madam Inge Anderson, to provide introductory remarks. Madam Anderson, you have the floor. Apologies. Would you like to say anything at this moment, Inge? Apologies. We are trying to operate under these complicated technical problems. Inge, please. Okay, I propose that I think we are having some technical difficulties, so I propose that we move as I suggested, that we break now. We will come back to the general statements and we'll provide the Executive Director an opportunity to comment, make additional comments if she so wishes. And I will now ask Jorge to give us some directions in regards to the technical steps that need to be taken so we can move to the consultations without interpretation in the next minutes. Thank you very much. Jorge, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Chair. And indeed, we keep on navigating and advancing in our agenda despite all these challenges. We want to reassure delegates that we will conclude the plenary and the substantive and important administrative items that are in front of us. But as agreed and proposed by the Chair, it is our recommendation that in order to make the best available use of time, we move straight to agenda item 8, which is, I just will repeat exactly what the Chair said, which is preparations of decisions and outcomes of the online 5th session of the United Nations Environment Assembly. In accordance with the approved structure that the CPR has considered, this item will be looked in the context of an informal group. This not requiring interpretation, simultaneous interpretation, that is in accordance with the structure that we have approved. Therefore, in order to facilitate the work of this committee, we will use an alternative platform, the GoToMeeting platform that we use for all our negotiations and all our consultations. And this will be open for member states. The link will be available in the next 15 minutes. You will receive an email. And you all know, all delegates know very well how to use this platform, which is an excellent backup plan. Meanwhile, we will continue to work with Interprefy and with the United Nations office in Nairobi in order to be able to announce the resumption of the plenary at the earliest available opportunity, so that the committee can discharge its functions, conclude its agenda, and pursue its agreed organization of work. So with those remarks on our side, I hand back to the chair, who will provide additional guidance. Chair, over to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Secretary. So I now will suspend the plenary meeting of the 5th OACPR. Please bear in mind that the plenary of the 5th OACPR will reconvene this afternoon, Nairobi time, as soon as we have cleared the problems that we are facing with Interprefy platform and the UNON supporting team. Thank you again to Interprefy and UNON team for their help in sorting out these problems. So you will receive notice of the GoToMeeting in the next few minutes. So can we reconvene for the informal consultations in 20 minutes, half an hour?
20 minutes, it's doable.
Okay, 20 minutes. So it's 20 past 2 in Nairobi. So at 20 to 3 Nairobi time, we will reconvene in an informal setting to proceed to the consultations on the 3 draft decisions. The plenary meeting of the OACPR is suspended until further notice. We will reconvene today again. Thank you very much, and apologies for the problems, and I look forward to meeting you all in 20 minutes. The meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, Chair. And this is just to inform delegates. We will post the GoToMeeting link in the comment section of this Interprefy platform, and we will send it by the usual channels to the Committee of Permanent Representatives, the permanent representatives, and all registered users that have signed up to the OECPR. So in a few minutes, we will see each other in the GoToMeeting platform to be able to resume our consideration and start our consideration of draft decisions. Thank you.